This is the newest iteration of the Ridetech 4-link, also previously known as the G bar, I believe, and the Air bar later on from Ridetech, and now they're just calling it the Ridetech 4-link in the first gen Camaro. I have the Cradle installed as of now. Basically, it's ready to be welded in, and I'm going to do that probably after I set the rear end, get the pinion angle set, get all my links equal length. But basically the instructions, state that your links should be the correct lengths, get them all in there, and the rear, make sure the rear end's centered. I'll do that with plumb bobs on each wheel well. And set your length and your pinion angle, and then tack weld your brackets on your housing to set that. I'm still in the process of raising the transmission about 1.5 degrees, give or take. Right now it's about 4.3 down, give or take, and I'll be raising it to about three down, and then equal and opposite with the differential will be 3 up. So what I ended up doing here was I ran put 6 rib nuts in initially, these 6. The reason I didn't do 8 is because there's actually a factory hole in the subframe there, so you'd have to fill that, weld it, and then drill it and put a rib nut in. And it seemed to me like you'd fatigue the metal, and just, it's not very thick. It's a pain in the butt to weld on, and didn't make a lot of sense. So, by doing the vertical ones, it'll suck it up obviously straight up here, but it pulls it at an angle here. So you want to get those all set and then drill your horizontal. So I use this as my, at least to start the holes, as my jig, and then, pulled it out and used the proper size bit. So I used like a 3/8 bit for the holes, because that's what these are, 3/8 bolts, and then finished it off with the bit they provide, whatever that is, 7/16 or maybe even larger, I can't remember. I did not put a rib nut here. They said, of course, they tell you to put rib nuts in all the locations, but like I said, I'm gonna come back and stitch weld each one of these flanges here, and probably the face of this, so it's not going anywhere. Because that rib nut there is really hard to get in. A lot of guys talk about that in the previous generation, that they can't really get that started. Even if you try to center punch the center, if you're off just a little bit, there's a likelihood of not being on center, and then the rib nut doesn't, the bolt doesn't line up. And yeah, be prepared for that, because it does deform a little bit. The rib nut will deform, and it does pull itself off center in some cases. So I did have to open up one of the holes, and this one here in the actual cradle. But pretty good. I mean, really, this is why I want this direction, because I was thinking about doing oh god, I can't think of the name. Torque arm suspension. I have a X pipe like most people do at this point. I didn't want to lose that. The Speed Tech was a lot of fabrication, and getting it square concerned me. This is square. It was pretty easy. It's probably not as good as the Speed Tech torque arm, but it made sense from a budget perspective and my abilities, really. So what I ended up doing was finding center on the cradle itself, between the suspension pickup points for the upper bars, and then finding center between the frame rails and lining those two up. And that's what I did here. You kind of see that plumb bobs the line off the cradle, and then that's between those two marks is center between the frame rails. I ended up with a thicker shim over here versus this side. And then after I got done, I was all proud of myself, and I started thinking, oh wait, what about center line between here and the inner fender well? Because I did not mini tub this car, and it had a tendency to scrub always on this side, this tire, a little bit under hard cornering. And I was hoping to address that through this process, and realize that just because you're centered between the frame rails doesn't mean you're centered between the wheel wells, because these cars have quite a bit of variance. So I ended up going back and remeasuring everything and using a plumb bob off the inner fender, inner wheel tub, and cleaning that area, making sure it's as flat as possible, strong magnet, and did the same thing with the other side. Measured 2 in the center line, and turns out it's, I can't believe it, it's dead nuts on. We used a T-square and level and tried to measure roughly off that, and I was coming up with a 1/8 to 1/4 inch difference. I'm coming up directly, just basically dead nuts on center. So I'm going to leave it where it sits. I was going to slot these and move it over and pull shims and do X, Y, and Z, and I don't have to do that unless I made some major mistake. We should be good to go. Now, Ridetech will tell you that, you know, just put the shims in centered, and they said I'm going to a lot of extra lengths to do this, but and then you could adjust with your upper bar length to get the wheels centered, and I'll still have that ability to do that, obviously, but yeah, so we'll see. So that should move you, this, if you did uneven lengths here, that would move you either this way or that way with the whole housing for the most part, and then the lowers you could adjust in the wheel well by length, lengthwise. So pretty good, I think. I guess time will tell. I'll probably wait to tack these in until I get this thing all set up and check everything with plumb bobs, and make sure that it looks square. And I might even wait to get a 4-wheel alignment and then come back and just finish. This is all weld through primer, so I don't really care. I'm not going to drive it hard. It'll be fine the way it is now. So yeah, stay tuned. I will get this thing all squared out and built out, and pinion angle done, and should have some more content if anybody ever watches this.